In my nearly 18 years of life, I have moved between 4 countries 6 times and changed 10 schools. As someone who's an introvert to the nth order, these experiences were undoubtedly huge challenges for me to overcome. From not understanding anything in school to having to spend long hours at home catching up on huge chunks of the syllabus I might have missed, I spent years cursing the process of moving and victimizing myself consistently. My friends get to stay in the same school for their entire life. Why do I have to keep moving? Basically, why me? Additionally, being exposed to a range of different cultures since a young age was a huge culture shock for me. I was only 8 when I moved to the UK from Singapore, and I didn't have any idea of just how different it would be. Learning styles in school were different, teaching styles were different, and everyone interacted differently. And I just didn't identify with anyone over there. And weirdly enough, the same thing happened to me when I moved back to Singapore 4 years later. So just for reference, this is what I looked like before moving. And 4 years later, this is what I look like after moving. I landed back in Singapore yet again with the same question in my head. Why me? Yes, why me? And I identified so much with the people in London this time, and I also developed a slight accent that, once again, the obstacle of change was a huge challenge for me to overcome. So now I'm going to put a pause to the UK-Singapore affair and get back to that very soon. And I'd like to fast forward to December 2022. Just by a show of hands from the audience, has anyone heard of Bangalore or visits Bangalore often? And has anyone heard of Rangoli Gardens in Bangalore? So in the morning of 28th of December, my birthday, I wake up at around 7 a.m. and immediately my mom goes, "Kavya, get ready, we need to leave soon." Mind you, I don't know where we're going and how we're going, but nevertheless, I get ready and I eat some nice hot dosas that my grandma made for breakfast, and we're out of the house. Sooner or later, we reach this place called Rangoli Gardens. I walk in and I go, there's way too many people around here. And then I look closely and I realize that those very people I was looking at were statues of people, life-size statues of people doing different activities. So for context, the concept of Rangoli Garden is very interesting and different to me because essentially what they've done is reconstructed a rural village from olden Karnataka with life-size figures doing their daily activities and, most importantly, engaging in social harmony. So already the presence of zero conflict has caught my eye immediately. As an IB student that's struggling to manage her own time, this experience was so refreshing, and seeing so many different things going on was definitely a good break from my busy schedule, but it also sparked my curiosity and got me thinking about how times have changed drastically. How did everything seem so perfect within the system? How is no kid fighting with their mother over what's for dinner? How does everyone look so realistically eager to continue with their daily chores? Now you all might be thinking, Kavya, let's be real. They're just statues. We won't know what they're actually thinking in the moment. And that's a completely valid point. They are statues, they're not real, and so they don't really have any thoughts. But the reason I'm able to so confidently conclude that it was indeed a happy place to be is not just from their expressions. So I have this habit of standing next to my grandmother while she's cooking in the kitchen and talking to her about almost anything and everything. She'll be busy making a dosa and dousing it in ghee, and I'll come up with the most bizarre and random questions. One of my favorite ones being, Mom, who's your favorite grandchild? And while she always had an answer for every single question, this was definitely one of her least favorite ones. Likewise, through the mist of the pressure cooker brewing mango curry, I delved deeper into topics about her childhood and her style of living. Something that intrigues me to a very large extent is how my grandparents lived, and I get most of this insight from conversations with them. So I'm standing next to her and I go, Mama, were you never bored after school? Technology back then was something unrelated to a child's after-school routine. While most of us would relate to coming back home and immediately plopping ourselves on the bed and watching Netflix, binge watching our favorite Netflix show, the idea of that seemed rather foreign and unfamiliar to my grandmother. Rather, she replied with a simple no, almost as if it was ridiculous for me to have asked her whether she was bored after school. She then went on to explain that things were simple back then. While she didn't have the chance to binge watch her favorite Netflix show, nor did she have the stress of completing 3 assignments she procrastinated completing. While she didn't get to call her friends or FaceTime them, she most importantly got to spend time with them in real life. And while she didn't get to put her AirPods in and listen to lo-fi beats while doing work in an air-conditioned room, she most definitely got to spend real-life quality time with her family and friends, and most importantly, live in the present. So do we see a pattern here? Because I surely did the next day when I went to Rangoli Gardens, drawing parallels from what my grandmother said. Even though she wasn't exactly present during the days of olden Karnataka, a lot of her experiences were clearly translated through the showcase itself, from taking care of children and just being in the present moment. So as I'm making my way through Model Village, this was the showstopper for me. This is known as a Sali Guri, and it was the traditional education system back then of olden Karnataka. All of this felt very close to the Gurukul system, and when I was looking into the setup itself, I noticed that the Sali Guri setup was very similar to the modern educational setup that we have. As we can see, we have students, and not pictured in the photo right now, but there was a chalkboard and a chalk with the teacher teaching them. However, the context, the location, the manner of learning, and most importantly, the method of teaching had vast differences from the way we all learn today. And with that, I present to you my talk, which focuses on the transition from chalkboard to keyboard of our modern world today, and how learning has sculpted itself into a very digital and stressful world, and how knowledge of past systems may as well be beneficial to students today. So the entire time while I'm walking through Model Village and looking at all of these life-size statues, I'm thinking, why not me? As someone that's completely stressed with a bunch of deadlines on her head, these moments did spark my internal jealousy a little bit. It's almost the equivalent of seeing people watch the Oppenheimer movie on their Instagram stories while you're studying for a physics exam the night before. And so as I was looking through these experiences, I realized that I wanted to know more about it. I wanted to know more about the Gurukul system, how learning was conducted back in the day, and how ancient education systems addressed all aspects of learning. How did society play a vital role in learning? So now I'm going to list down the three most important aspects of holistic learning. Holistic learning is a very important term for the next few topics I'll be covering, and as per the American University School of Education, the goal of holistic learning is to cultivate a developing child's physical, emotional, moral, psychological, and spiritual attributes. This is more or less covered by the IB syllabus with the components such as TOK and CAS, with TOK standing for Theory of Knowledge, where we get to explore the philosophical aspects of a lot of the subjects we undertake in IB, and the CAS component standing for Creativity, Activity, and Service, which encourages students to get out of their comfort zone and engage in social activities. However, more broadly speaking, I think these are the three main aspects of holistic learning which make the learning holistic in the first place, with the first one being holistic learning is experiential, holistic learning is both teacher-guided and self-guided, and holistic learning is culturally sensitive. Expanding more on the Gurukul system, it was essentially a residential education system which was deep-rooted in values and disciplines, such as hard work and honesty and self-control, etc. Nowadays, it's very popular to see a lot of emphasis placed on STEM subjects, especially the core ones, such as physics, chemistry, and mathematics. But back then in the Gurukul system, it was slightly different because an equal amount of emphasis was placed on all aspects of learning. Coming to the first aspect of learning, with holistic learning being experiential, I'd like to give a brief mention of Barbara Rogoff, an American psychology professor that I had the opportunity to learn about when my mother learned about her when doing her master's in London. Barbara Rogoff came up with a new framework of learning known as the LOPI, which stands for Learning by Observing and Pitching In. This framework came to life when she had the opportunity to volunteer with the Mayan community in Guatemala. And her time volunteering led her to think about how rural communities learn and live together. In an interview, she expanded on the basic idea of the LPI, and I'd like to briefly share what she had said in the interview. Her time volunteering led her to think of learning not just as the transmission of skills and knowledge, but instead as a process of growth. A process of people transforming their participation in the activities, the endeavors that they are involved in, and they anticipate being involved in. This relatively new perspective of learning was well achieved by the Gurukul system back then. Students, or shishyas, were enlightened on a plethora of skills, one of them being the skill of learning itself. Hands-on activities were a general must when learning, and held the belief that students would be able to apply the theoretical knowledge that they learn in real life situations rather than being confined to a certain set of scenarios that they might learn through theory. Coming to the second aspect of learning, with learning being teacher-guided and self-guided. Within the system of the Gurukul, the Shishya and Guru relationship, or the student and the teacher relationship, was very valued and treasured and treated with paramount importance. It was said to create an all-rounded positive environment enabling efficient learning. And as the quote goes, a good teacher is like a candle. It consumes itself to light the way for others, implying that every bit of knowledge that we receive is a token of the lineage that our teachers passed down from. However, more broadly speaking, the entire basis of the relationship between the Shishya and the Guru had a lot of different advantages. One of them being fortifying ideas of discipline and other values, and also allowing students to absorb knowledge at the correct rate naturally. Nowadays, we have tiringly lengthy online assignments and very long classroom lectures that we have to listen to, and our attention span does tend to fall here and there. However, students back then were engrossed in individual attention, which made their learning experience more personalized and gave them a larger attention span. I'm sure a lot of us would relate to the fact that if we were asked to do a very unfamiliar task now, some of us may not want to try it, some of us may be scared, some of us may try it and keep failing. But back then, the percentage of students that would undertake a challenge was much higher than now. And coming to the last aspect of learning, with holistic learning being culturally sensitive. One of the first things that I had learned when I was a child was the importance of culture and how our generation is responsible for not losing our traditions. Nowadays, it's rather difficult to find any direct cultural learning, and if we do find any, it's either marked up for exams or they're beliefs and values that we've been following blindly since we were children. However, I want to talk more about how culture has manifested my own identity and how it's played an important role in the Gurukul itself. In the Gurukul system, this was not the case, because living harmoniously and integrating in society played a very important role. Culture played an important role in making your own emotional aspects clear, your social aspects clear, making you a logical and critical thinker, and most importantly, allowing you to perceive society as a whole. Living harmoniously, integrating into society was not just a very important aspect of the Gurukul system, but also inculcating values such as honesty, passion, compassion, and self-control was very important, and students were also enlightened on not just academic knowledge, but how exactly should they carry out home chores, or how should they participate in household chores, how should they integrate into society, and how should they contribute to the society. So coming to how you can involve the Gurukul system in your life, how can you introduce it in your life after 3,600 years of it being lost? Exactly like that. Now, I'm not saying that you have to do a TEDx talk, or you have to do the IB diploma program, or you have to move between 4 countries 6 times and change 10 schools. Rather, involve yourselves in activities outside of your comfort zone. Why not touch upon your experiential aspect of learning and involve yourself in a hackathon or a competition involving innovation? I'd like to give an example of my own, where I participated in the TCS Sustainathon 2023 with a group of lovely friends of mine. While the initial objective when we entered the competition was to win the competition, we unfortunately didn't end up winning anything. We didn't end up coming first or second or third. But the entire experience itself taught us a bunch of different skills that we didn't have before, such as brushing up on oratory skills, learning how to share ideas in a very efficient manner, and just knowing how to make connections well. Why not take some time out of your busy schedules and engage in a hobby or pursue something else that's not related to your academic life? For example, I love baking, and you'll always find me baking at every given point of time. It's like my unpaid therapy. But you might want to involve yourself in pottery or painting, etc. Or why not talk to your family members about how your culture manifests in your identity? Where are your roots? Where do your roots lie? And how is your family keeping these roots alive? It's all subjective, really. The change depends on you. So now, in my nearly 18 years of life, I can proudly say that I've moved between 4 countries 6 times and changed 10 schools. And the first thought in my head is, I'm glad it was me. Because it's done so much for me, it's created the identity that I have today. And embracing opportunities such as this TEDx talk wouldn't have been possible if I didn't get to experience so many things and have so much exposure. Thank you.